I've looked at the top 5 best and worst units, and even the top 15 unique units in Shogun 2. But it's time to get a little more specific. Hi, my name is MrSmartDonkey and welcome to the top 6 Yari Infantry Units in Shogun 2. Before we get into it, I should mention that this list is as always based mostly on my experiences in legendary difficulty single player campaigns, and thus I would not recommend using this list as a guideline for multiplayer. For this list I judge units on their overall performance and not based on a single role such as anti-cavalry. Other factors include cost, building requirements and campaign limitations. Lastly, before we start the countdown, let's have a look at the contestants. The Yari infantry pool is by no means the largest in the game, with only 6 units. Only 3 of these are part of the vanilla-based game. These are Yari Ashigaru, Yari Samurai and the Yari Hero. The other 3 were added in through DLC. These are Long Yari Ashigaru, Yari Ronin and Bulletproof Samurai. These units are exclusive to the Oda, Ikuiki and Date respectively. Now that you've seen the contestants, feel free to make your predictions in the comments. I'd like to see what you guys think. With all the introductory stuff out of the way, it's time to get started with the list. At number 6 I've placed the Yari Hero. This is a unit I personally don't rate very highly, and I think of all the hero units is one of the worst. The thing about Yari units is that while they obviously look like they'd be great as anti-cavalry units, it turns out that there's other units that fulfill that role better, and Yari units end up being better as different roles. Herein lies the problem with the Yari Hero. They're a tiny unit built for a single purpose, to destroy cavalry. On paper they have all the tools for the job: rapid advance, second wind, Yari square, and of course their obscenely high bonus versus cavalry. But in reality cavalry will just avoid them like the plague, and you're left with a subpar infantry unit that gets bested by literally everything on this list bar Yari Samurai in a straight up 1v1. That's not to say the Yari Hero is entirely useless of course. Just like every other hero unit, they're kinda like a mini general. They inspire units around them and their second wind and hold firm abilities buff them and a few units around them even further. But if you want a hero unit there's much better choices out there. If you want an anti-cavalry unit there's much better choices out there. And if you want a mainline infantry unit, there's much better choices out there. The Yari Hero is simply outclassed in every role it might take, and the fact that you can only recruit one of them in a campaign is the nail in the proverbial coffin. Coming in at number 5 is Yari Samurai. It's no secret I'm not a huge fan of this unit, although I must say they did grow on me a little bit when I did my Yari Samurai only campaign with the Date a while back. Yari Samurai suffers the same fate as the Yari Hero. As an anti-cavalry unit there's better choices out there, and the same goes for mainline infantry. Out of all the samurai variants they're the worst in a straight up melee, and they even get bested by Yari Ashigaru and Yari Wall. They're worse than the Ronin units, and as I said earlier they're the only unit on this list to lose to the Yari Hero in a 1v1. So why did I place them higher, you ask? The answer to that question is rather simple. Yari Samurai are much easier to recruit and are not limited to a single unit. They're also better anti-cavalry than the Yari Hero. Because of their much larger unit size, they have an easier time catching enemy cavalry and indeed protecting your flanks from them. However, compared to most other units on this list, Yari Samurai have a rather sizable upkeep cost, especially compared to their closest comparison, the unit I have placed at number 4. Which is Yari Ronin. This unit isn't inherently all that impressive, and at first glance you might even think that they're worse than regular Yari Samurai, but looks can be deceiving. Despite their lower numbers, their increased stats actually let them beat Yari Samurai in a 1v1 quite comfortably. They do however miss out on rapid advance, which is a fairly important trait for an anti-cavalry unit. But that's the thing. Yari Ronin is in the fortunate position of being the Ikuiki's only real anti-cavalry unit at an affordable level, not counting Yari Ashigaru, which are more of a line infantry due to their Yari Wall ability. The Ikuiki have no other anti-cavalry units until they get warrior monks. They're missing Naginata Samurai units and Yari Cavalry. They do get light cavalry, but they can only do so much, and at best will be fighting an even battle against other light cavalry. Of course, once the Ikuiki have access to warrior monks, they get Naginata warrior monks, Marathon monks, Naginata warrior monk cavalry, and even the Naginata warrior monk hero. But not only will it take longer to have access to them, they're also much more expensive and not quite as tanky. So while Yari Ronin don't look like anything special on paper, due to the lack of alternatives they actually serve a much more important role than you'd think. That brings us to the top 3. Starting with Bulletproof Samurai. This is one of my favorite units in the game. I love Naginata Samurai, and this is basically a beefed up version of them, only they use a Yari instead. They have access to rapid advance and an obscene bonus versus cavalry just like Yari Samurai, but they share their higher attack and defensive traits with their Naginata Samurai counterparts. As mainline infantry they are great, as they can tank projectiles for days due to their naturally high and of course bulletproof armor, which reduces their damage taken by gun units severely. As anti-cavalry they're not too bad either. Having rapid advance is useful, although I wouldn't want them chasing cavalry because their armor does make them rather slow. They are perfect for protecting your flanks from cavalry though. If you could have your entire melee force consist of these, with archers supporting them, you'd have yourself an incredible army. But unfortunately that's where this unit's only real problem lies. In campaign you cannot recruit more than 4 of these at a time, which shatters that dream entirely. However, I have placed them above all other samurai units in this list, which tells you how highly I rate them despite that fatal flaw. On to number 2, where I have placed Yari Ashigaru. I believe at this point it is fairly clear that I rate Yari Ashigaru fairly highly. Yari Wall is just such an overpowered ability, there's no going around it. Not literally though. In fact, the only way to beat a Yari Ashigaru in Yari Wall is by going around it, but anyway. It doesn't matter if we're talking about mainline infantry or anti-cavalry here, because Yari Wall will stop it all. Especially in the early game, when they don't get torn apart by archers yet, they will beat almost anything that walks into their wall. And after they've gained some experience, literally nothing can get through anymore. Obviously Yari Ashigaru are horrible when chasing cavalry. Their anti-cavalry bonus still lets them beat enemy cavalry, but that's not the way you want to use them. The wall makes the unit. Play around its strengths, not its weaknesses. I should also mention the cheap cost and accessibility of the Yari Ashigaru. I'm sure this is known to all of you, but not only is Yari Wall the best Yari based ability in the game, it also comes on the cheapest Yari Infantry unit in the game in terms of upkeep. And to top it all off, they can be recruited in every single town. So if you're ever in need of an overpowered unit, you know what to do. Finally at number 1, we of course find Long Yari Ashigaru. I don't think these 2 final choices will come to anyone's surprise, as I have praised both to the heavens in many a video. So why is Long Yari Ashigaru better than regular Yari Ashigaru? They're more difficult to recruit, and they're more expensive to boot. Well, once again the answer is quite simple. We've established that Yari Wall is pretty overpowered as it is. Long Yari Ashigaru disagreed. They thought it could do with a bit of a buff, so they decided to severely increase the size of their Yari and make it so the enemy can't even get into melee anymore. They even decided to wear slightly heavier armor so that they're a little better protected from enemy ranged attacks as well. Their anti-cavalry bonus is the single highest in the game, not that they needed it, and even their morale is high for an Ashigaru unit. If you're playing any other clan, then regular Yari Ashigaru are the way to go. But if you're playing as the Oda, you'd be shooting yourself in the foot if you decide not to use this unit. That's gonna do it for the top 6 Yari infantry units. Let me know what you think of my list and tell me which category you'd like to see covered next. Get warm during the winter with some MrSmartDonkey merchandise. If you enjoy these types of videos, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really helps me a lot. You'll find all the relative links in the description. Thank you very much for watching, hope you've enjoyed, have a good day and goodbye.